So what we like to do at bLu Talks is we like to mix it up a bit. So it's not speaker, speaker, speaker. We like to mix it up with live interviews and things like that. Somebody asked if we can do an audience question. We might be able to do one, but the interviews we do are like 20 minutes. So they're very tight. So what we might do is I'll maybe take 15 minutes to ask Davis some questions, and then we'll try to leave 4 or 5 minutes, maybe answer 2 questions from the audience. So hopefully that sounds good to everybody. But let's jump right in. So I'm here with Davis Hawn, and some of you had the opportunity to hear his story around the dogs that he has. So first and foremost, Davis, we are in a tight schedule. So I'll just ask you quickly about the backstory of the dogs, just to lead us in. And then you've already given me some insight into a couple of stories I really want to know more about. So Davis, can you tell us, I guess, a little bit about the connection to the dogs and, Booster being the original dog, what it all means?
Sure. It's kind of hard, but it's very personal. But I like to share my story to help others. And my life, I was very codependent. I had 2 relationships. There were addicts. One was an alcoholic, one was a crack addict. And I tried to fix them. My parents were alcoholic, and they tell you that if you're the child of an addict, you subconsciously go looking to put people in your life that have those problems because you have a master's degree in rescuing the wounded bird. I didn't think that was true, but it sure was. And at one point, I was very hypervigilant, and I decided to give up. I went out west in a camper, isolated. One night I almost took my own life, and I had given a puppy to the addict in my life, thinking Mother Nature would be the cure-all. Not a good idea. And the addict was going to trade that puppy for a rock of crack. So I took that puppy, went out west, and I got to tell you, one night I almost did this. I woke up in the morning, there were kids knocking at the camper door. Mister, we got a dog. Can our dog play with yours? Yeah, take him. I heard a horrible scream 15 minutes later. I thought he'd been killed by a car. He had hurt his paw chasing the other dog. But the children were crying, the dog was crying, I started crying. And I had resented that puppy. He was always happy. I was always sad, right? But at that moment, it was like a Helen Keller epiphany. I got it. He had been pulling me back to healthy people. All these people coming to pet the puppy. And I got it. And I promised him that I would share him with the world. Needed an education to do it. Went out to Bergin University Canine Studies, got a master's in dog. And I've kept my promise to my booster. And they invited me to Korea when I read about cloning, and I cloned my dog there. And today I have his 2 progeny, boosted and busted. You see, Booster stole a toy. He was a thief. But I boosted his cells, sent him to Korea, and I got busted for it. Oh my God, you're such a jerk. You cloned your dog. You're playing God. I got busted for it. But I got to tell you, Booster had a girlfriend. Her name was Puffy. And she passed away 3 years ago, but I collected her cells. I had her cloned this time in the U.S. And there was a puppy born, and I named her in honor of the oncologist that saved my life. And from squamous cell, I was within 48 hours of death. And I'll never forget, I sent the doctor a letter. I said, look, I just want to live long enough to write my book. And I said, you know about my dog Booster, but I got to tell you, I took Puffy, I had her cloned. I've named the puppy in your honor, Dr. Thule, Lady Doc, oncologist. And I said, Puffy was the most loyal, intelligent, loving dog. So I named her in your honor, Puffers Thule Hawn. But she was a real bitch. And that's where the similarity ends, Dr. Thule. And I put that in the card and I sent it to my oncologist. I'd have loved to see her expression. But the dogs changed my life, went from here to here.
Well, and you want to hear an interesting add-on to that is he talks about as far as the name of the last dog. So, the whole thing of going and getting busted.
Yeah, I got boosted and busted, the clones in Korea. I lived in Seoul for 2 months. Their training started in the womb of the mother. Usually it's a C-section. They grab it because in the day it was $100,000 to clone a dog. I didn't pay that. But anyway, they don't want to risk the life of that $100,000 bill. Bonnie Bergin, president of the university, said, no, you need a live birth because the puppy needs the stress of the birthing process. It's going to be encountering stress for the rest of its life. This dog's handling stress in public, right? So that's the story is the dog started the stress in the womb of the mother. But anyway, when I bred, 3 years later, I bred the cloned female Puffers to this dog. And there were 7 puppies born, 2 male, 5 female. The largest one in the litter was a dark yellow puppy. Now, Boosted and Busted were born on 9/11. Wow. 9/11 event in my life. Puffers was due on 9/12, September 12th. She went into labor a day early. Her puppies were born on 9/11 also. Figure that one out, right? And a day later, she dropped another puppy. She was supposed to have 7, according to the radiographs, but she'd only had 6. But a day later, she dropped a puppy and it was healthy. So for me, it took on a little spiritual import. It was like God said, you know, this is another 9/11 event in your life. This is your future service dog. And they were due on the 12th, but I pushed it up to the 11th because it's another 9/11 event. But I let one be born on the 12th just to remind you what should have been, if not for my divine intervention. And that large male puppy, I named him Bale. You see, I got busted in Korea, and it took 8 years, but I finally made Bale. And that is my future service dog.
It's such a fascinating story, and I have to say, probably, well, I think we can say for certain it's the only story like this in the world. You know, there might be other people doing cloning something or what have you, but this is like what you just shared is the only place you're ever going to hear this. It's just the only place.
Well, you know, I've been quoted as saying, God gave preachers a Bible, and He gave me a dog, and that dog saved my life. And I learned that there's no such thing as coincidence. I've written a book. And I put it in italics in bold, coincidence. And at the very end, I said, you know, my dog introduced me to spirituality. I know there's no such thing as coincidence. There's really not. There's not. And that dog taught me that. He saved me and rescued me from the abyss, just like my oncologist. And, you know, he developed cancer. And he had a tumor in his head removed. University of Minnesota made a vaccine to fight it. First ever squamous cell carcinoma. He went into total remission, but he had radiation and operation. 10 years hence, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I had 48 hours to live because of exposure to a herbicide sold in this country that was known to be carcinogenic, yet profitable for the stockholder. We won't go there. But anyway, I almost decided not to have treatment. But I thought about my dog, my booster. I put him through that. How could I not go through what I put my dog through? So with that thought in mind, I agreed to the 5 bags of chemo every day for 6 weeks. They cut a hole in my head, put a port in my skull, tube through my brain. I got 2 shots every week for 3 months, chemo into the brain. Once a month thereafter, 75% chance I'd die the first week, 25% chance I'd die the second week. Hey, I'm still here. I don't know that I'd be here if not for my booster. It's emotional. It really is.
So I have to say, when you mentioned about the coincidences, so I was a person for years that thought everything was a coincidence. I've openly said for years that I was, for many years, and maybe even still to some degree, was a spiritual skeptic, I'll say. But having said that, it's funny now, what changed for me is I started doing some work with James Redfield, who wrote the book called The Celestine Prophecy. And in that book, the guiding idea was synchronicities are happening every day. But one of the things that James calls them that finally made it make sense for me was meaningful coincidences. And I like that because I think it gets us to stop arguing over whether it's a coincidence or not. So he's saying you can still call it a coincidence, but it has meaning to you. And so I really like that framing of it. And I want to ask you about your book. So I'm going to say in the new book I just wrote, it's called The Enlightened Passenger. And the very first of 10 lessons is around leveraging synchronicity for your life and business. You know, the more you notice, the more things happen. So I actually write in a synchronicity journal every day. So I got a new one I just started. And by the way, I'm going to write you guys can come in if you want. I'm going to write in your 9/11 thing. To me, that's a synchronicity. I'm going to write the 9/11 story in my synchronicity journal because it's a synchronicity that happened to me by virtue of us being here. So having said that, the reason I went down that path is talking books. So I'd like to ask you, your book, can you tell us if somebody's grabbing the book? It was on the screen a minute ago. If you can tell us if somebody's grabbing the book, what are they going to find? Like, is it stories of the dogs and the experiences you've had and the journey?
Yeah,
or
it's going to talk about my life's journey and my quest for codependent self-destruction and almost taking my own life, and how a dog morphed that into a passion to do good in the world. And I shared him. I've been all over the world with that booster, from kids with AIDS in Thailand, kids with cancer and Down syndrome in Mexico, getting laws passed. Tonight, a blind man in the Bahamas with a guide dog can get a hotel room by law. I helped them in 8 years to get a disability law passed. City of Mexico. It's just phenomenal, the difference that the dog made in my life. And I've included that in the book, all kinds of stories and events. Some will make you cry, some will make you laugh. And to put a little humor into it, my booster and I went on many cruise ships, and they send you this form to fill out. Does your dog know where to defecate and urinate, and you're responsible for damages? And that's cool. So I send them a photo of Booster stretching to urinate in the box with the grass on the ship. But then I include photos taken from the island of St. Lucia with the public signage on the side of the buildings, no public urination. And this is not my vernacular, but no piss here, order number 123. That's the government language on the side of many buildings. So I send them those photos. I said, if you're going to stop on the island of St. Lucia, please send the same form to the humans that might get on the boat, because I don't think they know where to do their business, but the dog does. He's got a $50,000 education.
I love it. Well, and I mean, at some point, kind of offside, but I'll mention it now, I probably need you to teach me. I think sometimes we need to train the humans more than the dogs. Teach me how to stop feeding my Pomeranian, because I think Pomeranians healthy are like 12 pounds. They say 14 is on the upside, depending on the Pomeranian, of course. On the upside of healthy is 14 pounds. I think ours is about 16. I've been away for 3 weeks. Shelly's gotten back down to, I think, about 13 pounds. I was home for a day. I don't know, I didn't weigh him, but I was home for a day, and I think I added about a half a pound again. And that's a lot for a dog that's only that small, but he's so hungry all the time. Yeah, wow. And he's got such pretty eyes. So I need training for how to...
You know, Booster I overfed initially till I went to Bergin University and learned that you can actually take 2 years off the life of the dog because you have too much weight. And a lot of breeds, Labradors, German Shepherds, have bad hips. So you're actually hurting the dog. And we think they're hungry. Some people feed them like green beans and stuff. But I don't know, how do I say this gingerly? I think maybe folks, humans that have a problem with obesity, a lot of their children have a problem with obesity, and their dogs have a problem with obesity. And I've fought weight all my life, and it was a disservice to my dog. But eventually I took the weight off his hips. Interestingly, this dog had a procedure called JPS, juvenile pelvic symbiodesis. They can go in and do a little cut in the hind quarter of the high. You think of a Thanksgiving turkey with that little gelatin layer in the carcass. They take a knife and they kind of melt that. It's like the front end of a car, and it's a very simple procedure, but the dog will less likely have bad hips in the future. So this dog and his brother went to the Mizzou, University of Missouri, and they did that procedure, and his hips are great. Original dog Booster, terrible hips. His clones, great hips. It's like you took Booster, put him in the time machine, brought him back to puppyhood, had the procedure done, brought him back up to the present. Same dog anatomically, right? This one has bad hips. This one has great hips. How cool is that?
Yeah, it's very cool. And, you know, I have to say, on the dog side, like we're still struggling as, you know, 2 kids, 2 cats, a dog, and his name is Lego, and he's just like a machine. He doesn't bark much, which normally Pomeranians do. He's great with the kids. All those things are great. But I think, like I say, at the end of the day, we're still probably the challenge. Having said that, when we're talking about technology, it is interesting because this is all related to really technology and what it was able to do. And I have to say, when we're talking about it, I struggled because I know some of the things we're going toward, I'm not super behind. Like, you know, for example, every book being written by AI at some point that nobody ever actually wrote it. They just grabbed all this stuff off the internet. Having said that, I was just at an event, and I'm curious your thoughts on this before we open it up for a couple of questions, but I was at an event called The Secret Knock. And this helped me with technology, never looked at it like, okay, what are the positives of some of these things? And so one of them they were talking about is with dementia. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if you've heard this, but he said not only isn't like we're hoping this is going to be a thing, we're testing this now to be a thing soon. And what they're doing is they're actually downloading our memories as of now. And then if you get dementia, they upload those memories back and you no longer have dementia. I mean, you know, it's hard to argue that technology is going to make a massive impact on the medical world. You know, there's going to be things, I believe, that they're going to be able to just like, it's like, for example, I'm talking out loud, but how hard would it be to think at some point with VR or something, you'll be able to see when somebody starts getting cancer in the first second. And then all of a sudden, how much easier is it to take care of that in the first second? So what I'm saying is when some people are like, oh, cloning this and that, I'm like, let's see where this technology goes. I mean, there's going to be some aspects, and then it's going to be up to us as a society to try to not amplify the negative. That's what I think.
Well, check this out. So I've been condemned for cloning my dog, my own family. Oh my gosh, you're playing God. And I try to tell people, I love what God gave me so much, I just want a photocopy. I want another of this gift from God. And it's cloning. Cloning's old technology, 15 years. But there's another technology called CRISPR. I think I remember one of the shows, Idol or something, and there were 3 beautiful little girls that all had maybe MS or something, and they would probably succumb to the disease by age 30. And I asked myself, why would parents keep having children that they knew would have this? That's not for me to decide. But with CRISPR, they can go in and cut out a snippet of the defective gene or DNA, take a donor snippet and weld it in. Now the children will no longer have that defect. But you're opening up the world to perhaps new diseases, or maybe the flu more often, or different strange things. Cloning is pure. You're not altering anything and changing successive generations. People love CRISPR, but they think that cloning is like witchcraft. Really, it's the other way around. It's a lot of times people don't know, and there's these perceptions. But I took a hit for cloning my dog. But for me, it was the greatest gift I've ever received in my life. When Booster was on his way out, I was very depressed, needless to say. But it gave me optimism for the future when the Koreans gave me the finest gift that anybody could ever have when I cloned my dog. And I don't think my parents would ever have cloned me. Let me just make that.
Amazing. So, like I said, I want to try to open. I know a couple of people say, "Can we ask some questions?" So, I want to try to open up just for a couple. I know Heidi will be doing this to me if we go beyond a couple of questions. So, do we have any questions from the audience about anything that Davis has been talking about?
I want to ask you. I have 2 questions. The first one is: your dogs are same physically, the same as your original dog, and do they have different personalities from your?
And that's a great question. I get that often. Physically, they are identical. However, there's something to do with the mitochondria of the cell. If you, let's say, clone a calico cat, the spots are not all going to be in the same place. So that might be disappointing to somebody. My dog has a white patch on his chest. The clones, they're yellow labs. You can't go wrong. But they actually have the yellow patch, so they're identical. You don't clone personality. If I'd taken those puppies and hit them every day, they would not be the same loving dog as my dog Booster was. So I've raised them in as close of a manner as I could. To me, it's like baking a cake. If you take the same ingredients, you put it in the same oven at the same temperature, you're likely to get a similar cake. And that's exactly what I got. And I want to add to that, there's a certain amount of memory that transfers. The first time I sent the dog to open a truck door to get a medical kit out, he did it like he'd been doing it all his life. Now, he'd been trained to open the refrigerator, but not to jump inside of a vehicle. Booster ate rat poison. He was walking in the shade before he was diagnosed. The sun was out to kill him. Now, clones now will walk in the shade, 100 feet to go 20 feet because it was an acquired. And I will tell you, I was interviewed by Dateline NBC. They had a military dog trainer, 5 Malinois puppies. I got to hold him in his kennel in Jersey. I said, I'm seeing acquired memory. Dave, I'm seeing it too. I walked one of those Belgian Malinois in public. They start snapping and snarling. Never had a dog in 30 years act like that. Behind this row of box bushes, there were 2 gentlemen from Afghanistan with the white robes. He was ready to tear them apart. You see, the dog they cloned was trained to sniff out the enemy in Afghanistan. The clone was behaving in accordance with the inherited memory. It's fascinating. And I traced my roots and learned about my grandfather. My father never knew his own father. As I was learning genealogy in real life with the cloned dogs, I was learning that my great-grandfather had an office at, or great-uncle in Carnegie Hall, and he was a public speaker and wrote books about the Civil War. So I'm like, gee, I got that genetically. My dog's got that genetically. It was fascinating.
My second question is, do you think there is a special breed for service dog? I'm saying this because I have 2 mix of people, American Bulldog, they are adopted. And one of them is super, like she never would try to attack a person, ever. The other one is a little cranky, and so that's why it's like, if this one, the one that is super good, she's like focused, very well trained, like very good at obeying.
It kind of depends upon what disability you're dealing with. Like we have a lot of like Aussie, Australian Shepherds, they herd. So if you have an autistic child that's known for escaping through the front gate and ending up in the neighbor's living room, that dog will herd or maybe gingerly pull them in the buttocks to pull them back in the yard. Or if the child leaves in the middle of the night, the dog will run to the parents' bedroom and wake them up. So in that case, it's great. The Labradors, Golden Retrievers are very calm. So if you're disabled, you can't chase the dog that's running away. You need the calm dog, and they're born picking things up. They're retrievers. So this dog will open the refrigerator, retrieve water, get my shoes, take off the socks. He will turn light switches off and on. So for that end, it's great. A lot of times veterans, we train veterans to train service dogs, and it helps their PTSD come down. The first thing you might want to do, the veteran, macho man, I'm going to get a pit bull or a Rottweiler. It's not really the right thing to do, because we put them with a golden and that soft, cushy, and I think it brings a lot of that down. So it depends upon your end objective as to the breed of the dog. But I'll tell you this, I walk into a store with a black Labrador. It's a little bit of a different experience than with a yellow one, because people equate darkness, and the Rottweiler, Doberman, Shepherd, Chow, Pinscher, they're all black dogs. 70% of inner city Chicago kids, I think, have been to a dog fight, and they equate a black dog with a dog fight. They don't know a Labrador from a pit bull. So, you know, and typically black is evil. And so there's a lot of psychology. This dog carries Mickey Mouse because children identify, and they know he can't bite because he's got a toy in his mouth. There's a lot of psychology that goes into it if you do it right. And there's nothing more infuriating than people having their pet dog and calling it a service dog. And it's a great disservice. And the state of Florida, it's a misdemeanor to do such. And I applaud the state for that.
Amazing. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much. Hopefully you'll thank Davis as well. And I hope you guys learned something unique and brand new today about clone dogs. So thank you guys.
Thank you guys. And thank you.